Welcome back to the Powerhouse Man Show, where I'm interviewing men from all around the world who are powerhouses in their own right. Now, I'm really excited for today's guest. He's a good friend of mine, not just an Instagram friend. I know every podcast host says that. This is a good friend of mine, and they just met them, 2 minutes ago. And sometimes, I think that you have an instant connection with people for sure. I totally dig that. But this is actually a good friend of mine. We spent a bunch of time together doing hikes, exchanging knowledge and information, and I'm excited to have him as your guest today, Mr. Christien Savoie. Savoie. If I try my French, I really am. Something I want to. It's on my butt. How do you say it in French? The last name in French.
Savoie.
Savoie.
Yeah.
Savoie.
Yeah. My grandparents would always give me shit when I pronounced the Savoy. So now, in honor of them, I always make sure that I pronounce it right.
That's right. Yeah.
My roots.
It's on my bucket list. Learn French. I think it'd be so dope to speak French. So here's the deal. You are the amateur. Is this? I can't read my own writing. Cage Rage middleweight. So this is the amateur division Cage Rage middleweight champion, and you're currently the professional Elite One welterweight and middleweight middleweight champion. You're ranked #1 pound for pound MMA fighter here in the Maritimes in Atlantic, Canada. Welcome to the show, brother. I appreciate you spending some time here, man.
Thank you, my brother. I'm excited.
When you hear things like, champion and all that kind of stuff, we want to talk about having a championship mindset. And, guys from all around the world, they connect with me largely because, I practice semen retention, which is like a strange concept to a lot of men, but not so much in the fighting world. Have you heard of the practice of semen retention before, connecting with me and just with being so engraved in the fighting world?
Yeah, man. So, I'm pretty sure Mike Tyson, he was famous for he wouldn't have sex during his training camps. George St. Pierre, I'm pretty sure, did the same thing. Who's, arguably, well, he is like the best fighter to ever come out of Canada. So yeah, man, it's just another part of being a disciplined man, or and it's probably the practice that we talk least about, and that's why I respect a lot of what you're doing, because obviously, working out, eating healthy, doing all these things are great, and they're definitely a massive part of the puzzle. But our sexual energy is just as much of a part of that puzzle, in my opinion. And it's something that's like still, like voodoo-ish, So
Yeah.
and that's why, like, we have a lot of guys like me, who are telling people to eat right, work out, do all these things, which is great, But another part of the puzzle, I believe, is what you're doing, So thank you for that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, man. And you know that because when we talk about semen retention so openly and publicly, because so many people fail to understand this practice. First of all, it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. This is not something new, but it's been stifled out and suppressed out of society. And then there's people who just, downright, just like, in my opinion, they're very close-minded. So they don't want to hear about anything that would disrupt their thought process about life, especially their thought process around pleasure. Like, why would you want to take away pleasure in your life? And as a person that is a champion, continues to be a champion in many areas of your life, why is it that somebody would want to why would a man actually regulate his own pleasure?
Well, man, it goes back to like that's just, I don't even want to call it an extreme way, but it's just another practice of like, why am I going to choose, for me, that grass-fed beef instead of that chocolate bar? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's the same concept, and if you apply that, why am I going to go to the gym when it's like saying, why am I going to go to the gym? Because it hurts,
Right.
It's like you're going there in order to beat yourself up so that you can come back a stronger version of yourself. And any time you hold back from pleasure, you're essentially teaching yourself how to become a stronger version of yourself, you know? And if you can do that with sex, which is something that's just thrown, you know, in our society, in our culture, that's constantly plastered in our face, if you can learn how to control that, that is power, my friend, you know?
Well, that's why I practice it, and that's why I teach it as well. And I'm really appreciative of you because you're open about it, and you're like, no, this is actually something that we need to look at. And a lot of guys are, but again, the majority of guys aren't right now, and it's too bad. I feel like a lot of guys, me and you, we go on these hikes and these walks and such like that, and we have really good conversations. And something that we've talked about a few times is this idea of always going after the instant gratification or being so distracted, with video games. And we were talking about the Oculus, and I was just like, yo, man, that thing scares me. This metaverse scares me. All of that kind of stuff scares me. How do you think the modern man, what do you think when you look at the state of the modern man and you look around at men overall, where do you think, we're at as a society from your perspective?
Man, quite honestly, I see a ton of weak men out there, you know? And I used to have this hatred kind of mentality, you know, like I'd be like
Right.
mad at people. Like I'd be like, you know, get your shit together, dude, you know, go to the gym. And
Yeah.
like I still think it's important to keep that hardness. However, now I'm more like I'm a lot more sympathetic because like
Right.
again, a lot of people, they just don't know, man, and we live in
Yeah.
such an instant gratification and culture, and you know everything's just thrown in our face, and people haven't been educated to deal with all this stimulation, man. And like, you know, luckily I got into martial arts, and you know my father was, you know, he worked out and ate healthy and stuff like that, so I had these influences at a young age. But yeah, man,
Well,
it's
yeah, I was just gonna
it,
say that's so important, right? The idea of the influences. And often, like, we don't necessarily get all the healthiest influences or role models. Like, we don't have someone to mimic, that's necessarily eating healthy or, and again, like you said, there's a lot of weak men. And when I define weak men, I'm not just talking about physically. Yes, I think physically there's a lot. That's something I noticed in myself because like I worked on the computer and I worked like I didn't have to be out like I'm not, you know what I mean? I recognized over time, that oh man, I'm pretty weak. Like physically, like I was like, oh, I'm not as strong as I think my body is actually designed to be. And when I started recognizing it, I started like really taking my physical health in more importance. And that's just been more recent in my life. What I really worked on was mental strength. And they go hand in hand because your body and your mind, I think, are very reflective. So at one point, I developed a lot of good mental practices, meditation, which can really hold my mind very strong. I could generally be happy, generally be positive, generally keep my emotions, at bay, but not always, of course. And I recognize I have lots to grow. And I think one area that I know for me was physical strength is up leveling that. But one thing I recognize is that I didn't have a lot of people around me. Like I never went to the gym much. I never was really into sports and that kind of thing. I played soccer growing up my whole life, but I never watched, a lot of. I just wasn't really into it in that way. And what I recognized is when I decided I'm going to get strong, I recognized there was not a lot of strong people around me. That's why I appreciate hanging around with you. We'll go on the trail and you'll just be like, all right, I'm a bear. I'm gonna like bear crawl up this hill. And I'm kind of laughing, right? Because I'm like, I just don't do stuff like that, right? Or like you saw this like this tree, and then you're like, yeah, me and my buddy put it here. I'm gonna do a couple chin ups, right? And again, I was laughing. Like I took pictures, and I was like, and I thought to myself, yeah, I never really do that, right? Like that kind of like physical, just like, yeah, I'm gonna kind of express myself in this kind of physical way. But I've really been enjoying getting into that kind of spirit. Anyways, the point was the kind of little nugget I wanted to hone there was that idea of who you associate with or hang out with. and how much it influences you. And you were fortunate to have, good influences in the health way at a young age, but a lot of guys don't have that. And sometimes we're in our 30s, our 40s, and our 50s, but we don't really emphasize or put value on that's still true for us as adults. You know what I mean? Like the influence, whether we have it at a young age or when we're 50, it still holds the same truth. That if we hang out with people who have qualities in which we aspire to have within ourselves, over time, you can get that from other people. It's the easiest way to get it. And listening to shows like this or reading good books, however you get that information. And I just think that too many guys are plugged into negative friend groups, negative associations, people who are doing nothing with their life, and they have hopes and dreams, but they're hanging out with all these people that don't have hopes and dreams or aren't acting upon their hopes and dreams. And I just feel like that's why I think that's why I want to do this show so badly, because it was like an opportunity to give men high level conversations or conversations with real men who are also doing positive things in their life.
Yeah, like, man, you hear all these quotes, and like one of the common ones you see out of like the most successful people alive are, you're a product of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, Not
Right.
every like quote, that's got to be like one of the realest out there. You can't deny that, man. If you surround yourself with ice cream and porn and, all these unhealthy habits, you're going to become that, So it's the same. It transfers the same way. If you hang out with a bunch of unmotivated people who are talking about, some BS, you're going to start to develop the characteristics and the mindset of, the things that you associate yourself with, And,
right.
I've even noticed that with myself, man. If I'm around somebody that I don't necessarily want to be around, but I'm in a forced situation, just some,
Yeah.
I don't know, I run into somebody at some event or something, we're just shooting shit, or, but I do notice like it brings out like if they're speaking from a place that I don't necessarily want to be at, sometimes I'm almost, I become a less, I don't know how, I don't want to say become a lesser version of myself, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Like,
Yeah.
I start to take part in conversations that I normally wouldn't want to take part in, And
Yeah,
that's
we
what,
we
like,
drop our standards still in a way, like to match someone else
we're
instead
vibrating
of.
at like their frequency instead of
That's
our own.
right. Yeah. They come in, and I know I get caught up in it too, and I don't like it either, right? Some gossip's going on, right? You go right, and whatever, blah blah blah, some nonsense, and then there's this natural need to want to fit in or to connect, right? And so you feel like, okay, I gotta drop down. I'm gonna drop my essentially, I say my values, my self-image, even, right? Like who I know I should operate at a level I should operate at, I'll operate less than that to match somebody. But then when I leave that conversation, I'm resentful, not of them, but at myself, of going, why did I give up who I am to appease this other person? And I've really generally have done so much better at that, because one of the things I've committed to myself is I'm not going to live my life thinking about what other people think about me, because I feel like that's kind of like a slave mentality. Like I'm either, like I think a slave is somebody who's ultimately controlled by something else. So if you're controlled by porn or any vice, right, then it's got you. You're a slave to that. I think if you're controlled by what other people think about you or needing validation from other people, then you're a slave to the collective consciousness. You're a slave to the status quo, because that's mainly who's gonna try to validate you anyways.
Yeah, man, and that's why, like, talking about masculinity, like, masculinity can be expressed in so many ways, and how you were saying that you admire, like, me busting out some pull-ups in the middle of a hike, like that's that's my way, of always like, I'm a very disciplined individual, like I love to feel good, like, yeah, obviously, I got good natural levels of testosterone,
Yeah.
but like people like
Well,
me, like,
that's a huge thing, right? Because we know, like me and you've talked about it. One of the things that with guys right now is their T levels are all very low, dropping, right? Body fat, excessive ejaculation, unhealthy diets. Most guys aren't busting a couple pullouts on a hike because they're not on a hike in the first place, anyways. They're in front of their computer, Netflixing it out or something.
and what I was getting at, man, what I was going to finish with is that, like, expressing different ways of masculinity, that's who I am, but like, I understand that's not the whole puzzle, and that's why, like, you and I really complement each other, because I haven't dove in nearly as deep as you have in the realm of, up here, in spirituality and being, like, in meditation and all these great masculine qualities that you have, that I'm learning from you. And hence why, like, surrounding yourself with a strong, those 5 people in your life, because, like, again, you're surrounded, you're surrounded with somebody like me. I can teach you more about, like, like adding muscle mass and, being disciplined in certain ways than I learned from you in other ways. You know what I'm saying?
I'll give an example. I'll call myself out. I'll call myself out. I'll give an example, a perfect example, so everybody can know exactly what we're talking about. So one of the first times we went to the gym, and and you were showing me some fighting stuff. And then I was talking about my goals, and I was talking very like physically, like how I want to look, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of were like, well, that's kind of feminine, right? Because right, it was like, and then you were talking about the idea of like, man, I work out for strength, like I'm a fighter. My goal is to freaking smash a guy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that the difference in motivation, and that's something, like, I'm a coach for men, right? Like I work with men. I've got a couple programs where I work with men either one-on-one or in group settings. And a large part of being a coach is to help sharpen men. There's that quote that says, two sharp knives will sharpen each other. Two sharp men will sharpen each other, right? And so one of the things you did for me is that you changed my mindset about how I work out. And I'm going to put this practically so everybody can understand how this works. So I've got this, I come into this mindset of I want to look a certain way. You are like, yeah, I don't really work out to look a certain way. I work out to beat a man's head in, right? Right? Like I work out to hit somebody, right? Because you're a fighter. And I'm like, all right. And what I recognize, because this is the way I compute the world, is through energy. And I'm like, you see, his energy is more like, this is more like showy, egotistical. Like I want to look a certain way, but I'm not really functionally fit necessarily. Where you're talking about being functionally powerful. And I was like, no, that's what I'm gonna switch my mindset, and I'm gonna go after strength. I'm gonna be strong. And here's how this changed. So everybody knows how your mindset equals your results. This was maybe just a few months ago. And I was like, okay. And what I started doing is when I start doing my push-ups now, instead of thinking about like how my shape and all of that, I'm just focusing on like my power, right? Like just getting down and getting the full push-up in. And I noticed right away the quality of my workout went up because my focus was in my muscles as opposed to on my definition.
Mm-hmm.
And this subtle change in mindset has given me a better quality workout. And I think that one thing that I've learned is that it's all in the thought process. So when I'm hanging out with people, whether it's with you or anybody, and there's something that I'm like, I admire that about them, or that's a quality that I want to enhance in myself, I really look at their thought process. How do they think about it? And then I mimic that thought process in my own head until it becomes my unconscious programming, till it just becomes something I don't have to think about because it's just something that now I am. And
Yeah,
to
man.
me, like, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, man. Like, and a lot of like, not to take a shot at bodybuilders, but like, it's almost feminine in its own right, Like, I look at a lot of like bodybuilders who are just there, like, just for like aesthetics, And you
Yeah.
look at these guys, like, they got these, like this tiny little waist with a six pack and these gigantic legs and these gigantic arms, but like, they can't even move, and my mentality being a fighter and the competitive person that I am, I look at these big guys and I'm like, I'd break you in half, like you're not strong. You may, you put your muscles up and you look good, but like, I think it's feminine in its own right, because it's like,
well, it's very
it's all,
showy, right?
exactly, it's all
It's very
aesthetic.
like look at me aesthetics, which
Then you
is
look at
generally
like,
a much more a feminine
if you look at
quality.
like a lot of these guys too, like bodybuilders, they're not like lifting big weights, like some of them are, but like oftentimes it's just like, they're gonna do a bicep curl, sets of like 20 reps with a small weight, but that's because it's gonna cause inflammation, which is gonna give you that big puffy look, But that's exactly what it is. It's a look, And then they're like adding muscle in all these places that don't even make sense. Again, it looks good aesthetically, and I can't say that like there's things that I do that
for sure, yeah,
a bit of aesthetics in there, but
yeah.
I 90% of what I do is functional, and when you do that anyways, you're gonna look good anyways. You know what I mean?
Well, that's I was gonna say like, and that was the other thing, and that's what you had said to me in the gym. There, you were like, and then you were like, "Don't I look good anyways?" Right? And I'm like, "That's true, right?" So it's like, but again, I think the idea is becoming conscious of what's driving us. And just by the way, to qualify, just in case anybody is getting tripped up on the words feminine or masculine, what we're talking about is qualities and traits, and everybody has masculine and feminine qualities. But what we're noticing is that overall in today's culture, that we know statistically there's a decline in testosterone level on the planet, which means there's less masculine men, which means there's less masculine psychology as well. Because what a lot of men don't realize is that your physical body and your psychology go hand in hand. They're one and the same. So that's what I recognized. I'm like, I can't even, just when I started learning all this, I was like, man, I really want to get stronger, because my original motivation wasn't for a good body or anything like that, but it was actually to develop my mind to the next level. And what I recognize is that I want to have high T levels, as high as this body can get me in a natural way. I also committed that like I'm not going to do enhancers or anything like that. How do you feel about that kind of stuff? Like when guys start like, whether they're taking steroids or all that kind of stuff.
Well, me being a fighter and a professional athlete, as an athlete and for athletes, I'm completely against it, and especially in fighting, because our purpose is to essentially hurt the other person,
Right.
So yeah, man, I'm just what we do is already extremely dangerous, so to go in there, cheating is just it's not okay. But from a normal person's perspective, I don't think it's necessary, man. I think, if you're like 50, 60 years old, maybe, and you need a little extra oomph, who am I to judge,
Yeah,
But
not from a judgmental perspective, but yeah, I was just curious on your thoughts around that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I think that, like it's just like if you have a Tylenol, if you have a headache, take a Tylenol.
Right.
A lot of guys think they need testosterone, but it's like, look at everything else, man. Like, lose body fat, eat the right foods, get sun. All these different things are going to naturally enhance your testosterone anyways, and
I think
yeah,
there's a lot of
think it's necessary for most people.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of male. I see it in my coaching when I get guys reaching out to me, and sometimes what we're working on is like body, image, self image of the physical body, right? I don't like this, I don't like that. And of course, there's practical things like, well, work out, like for me, I was like, I don't like that my stomach hangs over. But I was like, that's nobody's fault. That's my fault, right? And I'm like, that's in my power to change. I think that that whatever is in your power to change, you should change, and you should try to excel at. Because I think as men, at least for myself, and what I've learned about male psychology as well, is that we take fulfillment from improving and challenging ourselves. Like there is an excellence that we're striving for. And when we feel that we are excelling at the things that we think are important, it doesn't matter what the world thinks is important. When we feel like we are improving our life and improving ourselves, we feel more fulfilled. We're more motivated. We're clearer of mind. And what I see going on right now, anyways, point is that I encourage guys to do the practical things, but then let go of the things that are out of your control. Like I'll never be a 6-foot blonde haired guy. You know what I mean? It's just not happening, right? You know what I mean? So I think that there's a balance, but I see a lot of guys dealing with body insecurity almost just as much as we generally as a society know that women deal with body insecurity. Where do you think that kind of stuff's coming from? Or have you ever dealt with that yourself?
Yeah, man, like, believe it or not, I have, like I used to look at like guys who are just, like more aesthetically pleasing than me and just be like, I wish.
Some people got the gift of beauty,
Yeah, yeah. Like, I just mean like, some guys, like, I'm not a guy who like, I can get like big and bulky, but I have a hard time getting like lean and ripped. I can, but it's not.
Right.
It's not a healthy look for me, I guess. And
Right.
like, I used to look at some guys and be like, I wanted to look like them, and at the end of the day, man, it's all about like, loving yourself, but loving the best version of yourself, and like,
Yeah, it's like that fight. It's that balance between I accept myself, but I'm still going to improve. I'm not going to
mhm,
beat myself up for something I'm not, but I'm also not going to just be used that as an excuse to not improve what I do have.
exactly. You got to deal with the cards that you're dealt, and
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, when it comes to insecurities, man, like I feel bad for people, and I've had like insecurities of my own, but it's like it's a waste of time, it's a waste of energy, and if it's something that you can improve, then fucking do it, that's
Yeah.
just what it
That's
is,
right.
So
Yeah, that's what I say. Like, if it's in your power to improve it, improve it. Like I tell guys all the time, I'm like, you want to be more attractive. Guys come to me for sex issues, dating issues, and stuff like that. I want to attract a nice woman, this type of thing. But I don't feel confident in my body. And I'm like, well, work out. You know what I mean? Because regardless, you may not be a 6 foot, 6'5", something guy. And here's another one. I mean, you talked about insecurity. Believe it or not, many guys are actually dealing with, I call penis insecurity, cock insecurity. They're watching all this porn, and they're like, I gotta have, some mega monster cock type of thing. And
yeah.
a lot of people laugh because it's kind of funny. I laugh. Like I'm like, I remember the first time getting messages, and I thought you guys were just like trying to like harass me a bit, right? Give me like a rough time for what I do. Talking about I got penis insecurity. And then I got on calls with guys, legit. I was like, wow, I never even thought in a million years I'd be dealing with this. But this is a legit thing, guys watching porn and stuff like that. And I see it. It's the same thing that happened to women. We allow corporations and marketers and all these people who just want to exploit you for money, Money's not bad. I want to make money too. Everybody wants to have money, but I see that we're like selling our souls for it. We're selling ourselves out. We're doing all kinds of crazy shit. And like I see guys like again in the gym and all that stuff and just going above and beyond, taking all these, putting themselves in so much danger and risk. And the root of it is insecurity or not feeling good enough.
Yeah, man. And you made a good point to me once about how, like, basically, if you're in a state of, if you're insecure, like, that's good for businesses. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like, like women being insecure, like, is good for like the makeup and the lashes and
Man,
all
it drives
lash.
billions and billions of dollars.
And then
Insecurity, it drives money.
in the same sense too, man, if you're like insecure and you feel bad about yourself, then you're more likely to like find pleasure in different things, which is, like fucking food and porn and, all these negative habits, So yeah, man, when it comes, I feel so bad for people who have insecurities, and like I said, I've dealt with it in the past, and like, but it's just like, man, people really like, no matter what shape or size you are, you just got to come to the realization, like, God put me here the way that I am, and I'm on a specific mission, and all I can do is become a greater version of myself. Then you also got to understand, say you're a 5'5" guy, like there's 6 feet, I'm 6 foot tall, and I told you, like, I've looked at, guys who are ripper and taller and felt insecure about myself, so like, no matter what shape and size you're in, insecurity will always be there, or yeah. I don't want to say will always be there, but like, so many people deal with insecurities, man.
Well, we can always easily look at, so the big 6 foot ripped guy, he may have something else where, he looks at someone else who's bigger, or he may look someone else and say, well, I don't like my hair, or I'm losing my hair now, right? Like a lot of guys are insecure about, hair loss as they grow older, right? Or the fact is that, even if you take a look at guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Rocky Balboa, I mean, no matter how ripped they are, they still look like older dudes. Now they look like great older dudes in the sense of like, they're in their 60s and 70s and they can, they could still outbox probably most 20-year-olds, right? But the fact is that age catches up on everybody, right? And now you brought up the G word, which I love very much, is God, right? And we've talked a lot about different philosophies, Stoicism, the Vedas, Christianity, so many different philosophies and ways of seeing life. How has that, how is spirituality and learning more of these inner principles helped you in your own life and helped you develop your own mindset?
So I've kind of been like, when I look back, I've been a spiritual person my whole life, like since I was a kid, man, and like nobody ever like taught me that. My grandparents were Christian, but like,
Right.
I wouldn't really consider them spiritual people. I don't know, but I do feel like I kind of found spirituality on my own. Like I just love like being in the woods and meditating on rocks. When I was a kid, probably from watching like Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that as well. But
well, according to the Vedas, and everybody's got their own perspectives and such, and it's all open here. That would be actually a tendency from like a past life, like that's in your consciousness. You already were somewhat attuned to meditation and these things, and so as a kid, you might have had, maybe you really like Dragon Ball Z for that aspect, where someone else might have looked at Dragon Ball Z and just like the drawings of it,
Well, yeah, like obviously, like martial arts ended up being my passion, and we talk about past lives. I think I was, I was like a samurai or gladiator or something of sorts, in which, who practice, spiritual practices. And it's only been, this last year, man, I went through, like you and I talked about, but I really feel like I had a spiritual awakening, and finding God just kind of like, it has helped me just make reason out of everything,
Yeah.
And I think that's the greatest thing about it. And when I say God, I think you and I share the same perspective. Like, I don't follow any specific religion, although I respect all of them, but I just believe in something greater, the universe, God, whatever metaphor you have for it. I think there's like a life consciousness, and
Right.
that's what I refer to as God. And I think it's the only way to make sense out of life in a way, it's the best way to live for me, because I can almost justify everything that happens, and spin it around into something positive. Like, for example, everything that's going on right now, it's
Right.
it's taking a toll on everybody, myself
Yeah.
included. But when I ground myself, I try to recognize that, God has a plan. And
Oh, sorry, we can't hear you, man. Oh, go say something.
I'm back. Sorry,
Oh yeah, you're back now. Yeah, yeah.
somebody was trying to call me. I had to hang up.
No worries.
Yeah, basically, man, like just having the mentality that everything happens for a reason. And, I believe that as long as you're a good person and you're producing good karma, that, you know, things will work out for the greater good. I hope that
Yeah.
made sense.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate it. Again, a lot of people, that's another thing, right? A lot of people don't realize like God is being pushed out more and more in our society. And I mean, I can understand why, right? Like I was really turned off of religion too. I still kind of am. I respect religions. I practice the practices of what's known as bhakti yoga, as part of the Hare Krishna community. I still go to church, so I like to, because I grew up Catholic and Christian, and now I take on the yogic practices and kind of have combined them, and seen a lot of similarities. I've studied a lot of other religions too, and I see that they're all ultimately pointing to the same truths, the same life principles, and that we all belong to a greater picture, and that we're part and parcel of the whole thing, that ultimately that a spirit of cooperation is always what's going to make things successful. And if we don't have a spirit of cooperation, ultimately, then we're sort of doomed, because we're all sharing the same planet and same resources and same everything. And I think, unfortunately, what's happening right now is the spirit of cooperation is totally being like diminished. More for a pleasure-based society where we feel entitled. I see this big entitlement to pleasure, entitlement to things that you like nobody is entitled to. But we're forgetting the basics: good food, good friends, good community. Like the very basic things in life are actually free, and it's like we're so disconnected from them that we forgot that these things are actually what drives like a good, healthy life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I just think the spiritual aspects of life for most people are so far removed of their consciousness and awareness. And that's why you said they feel so chaotic. It's easy to sway animals, because animals don't have higher level consciousness. They're completely driven by instinct. So if I want my cats to come to me right now, it's so easy. All I have to do is open up a can of cat food and they will be here in 2 seconds flat.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're completely driven by instinct. They don't have the conscious awareness to be like, you know what? I think I'm going to fast today, so that I can see if I'm more than my body. Can I conquer my own body? That's what, like, semen retention, it's like I'm going to see who I really am when I actually try to discipline this energy. Then you get to meet yourself at a whole different level, right? And I think that these practices that people take, that every tradition somehow, it's a practice of discipline. Whether you look at it this way or that way, there's ultimately practices of discipline, right? Whether you follow the 10 commandments or you follow, the different principles or regulations that any religion or spiritual practice preaches, ultimately the principle is without disciplining ourselves, there's no evolution.
So like I've been studying a lot of like dopamine, the chemical in our brain. I listen to a ton of podcasts and stuff, and they talk about how like if you if you have a big happy, like if you eat some crap and watch porn and whatever, that surge, gives you a big spike of dopamine. You then have an opposite reaction on the other side, which is like, how do I explain this?
Basically, like you got an up, you got to have a big down. You got an up, you got to have a down.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. And like you and I have talked about this, where like, like for me, it was like after fights, like I have my fight, it's this big glory moment, I win a title, whatever, everybody's cheer my name, then it lasts about 3 days afterwards, then I hit a wall, boom. And,
right.
And I know, similar things have happened to you.
Oh yeah.
And, it just goes to show, man, like, yeah, people who like are constantly chasing the next high, that is not the key to happiness. And that's what we're educated or what we're being pushed to think, like, and I see so many people living their lives that way, man. Like, they're just going from McDonald's to Netflix to partying to this to that, but it's all going to catch up to you, and the further you push yourself down that road, that's when you can't maintain that drug, which you can't, like it's like doing, it's like doing any other drug, like eventually your body's going to need more and more in order to, be content with it,
Yeah, it won't even feel good. Well, that's what happens with guys with porn, right? And masturbation is they do it. So much to the point where if they don't do it, they feel off, right? It's like, oh, well, I got to watch porn just to get my, or I got to bust a nut just to get my, or I got to smoke a joint just to, or I got to, and, we've all had that. Like my thing is, I've told you, I've been very open. Like my battle has really been with weed. And it's like this type of stuff is a block in our life. If we don't, that's why I call it the war on porn, right? When I'm helping guys with porn, I'm like, it's not an outward war, it's in here. We have to actually go to battle with these vices and these things in our life, recognizing that these things we take these things to enhance us, but we're actually diminishing our capacity and our ability to be successful in the world and to be genuinely happy. And
where I was getting at with that whole thing, man, is like, that's why it's important to practice semen retention. That's why it's important to eat the right things. That's why it's important to exercise. That's why people think I'm crazy for doing, like swimming in the river in December,
Yeah, I love that. You're right into the whim. Mr. Hoff would be proud.
But the concept is like, once you do hard things, then you almost like earn the pleasurable things, and yes. I use this example with people all the time, man, like where, like right now I've been really, really clean with my diet. So I'm back in this, my body's back here. But like I've told people, where if I'm eating, if I'm going through a phase where I'm kind of eating junk food, then, at first it's like, well, I have like, like a ham and cheese sandwich. Then it's like, well, I add bacon to it. Then it's like, oh, I add mayo to it. Then it becomes, this giant sandwich.
Just
like,
gradually, whatever it is, it just,
exactly. I'm, towards the end of it, it's just like, well, it's just, fuck, it's just a sandwich, And now where, I've been eating very clean, I eat an apple and it's like, like, it's like the best piece of sugar you've ever had in your life. It tastes like candy, but it just goes to show, if you practice discipline, and then, like the simple things in life become beautiful, and that's why like you and I, that's why you and I can enjoy things like going for a walk in the woods, man. We can enjoy the beauty of the sun and the trees and the fresh air, and but if you're stimulated by video games and artificial things all the time, then you lose touch with the real beauty of life.
Yeah. Yeah, we're over, like I said, and we don't realize that our senses over time become dull,
Yeah.
right? We just don't know it, and most people's senses are dull. That's why they're not sensitive, not being sensitive as in like crying at a movie sensitive, but they're not sensitive to the subtle energies and to the undertones in life and all the magic that there is. It's like we've created fantasies, movies, and all these things, but we don't realize that we live in the greatest movie. Like this is like we live in a cosmos. Like there's so much to discover, and that's why I really appreciate kids, because when you hang out with a kid, you'll see that pureness still, that like just, oh my goodness, everything is amazing. What, mommy, you're washing dishes? I want to wash dishes, right? Washing dishes is like a thing to do. But as we get older and older, and I'm not saying, like that there's obviously a natural weaning off of these things, but the more that we're, like you said, we're going to McDonald's, to porn, to smoking a joint, to drinking a few beers, scrolling on social media. I was like, no wonder life seems boring to everybody. No wonder, like, like you said, we walk on the trails and it's normally empty. Like there's way less people outside. And I'm not even talking about pandemic stuff. I'm talking about just in general. Like even before the pandemic, there's way less people outside, than there was ever before. And I think that we're spending more and more time disconnected. Our phones are running us. And that's why like, the work that, with your Instagram and stuff, just promoting healthy lifestyle, doing that stuff, doing the work you do as a fighter. It's inspiring because it's like, here's somebody doing something. It's why, like, I've got the Semen Retention Army. I've created a coaching program called the Powerhouse Man, where it's like all encouraging guys. The very essence of the programs are getting guys back, more and more back to natural living. How did nature design it? I say, guys, when it comes to sex, right? Every guy wants more sex. I'm like, you want more sex? You have to give up the fake sex. Get it for real. Watching the screen isn't getting it for real.
Yeah, like going back to like appreciating kids because they can enjoy the little things. Like what really gave me perspective is that I have a cousin who went to Mexico, and he did like ayahuasca retreat for 2 weeks in like the jungle of Mexico, and he was like with this tribe, and he said these kids, they're playing with bottle caps, like just flicking caps around. Said they're like the happiest kids you ever seen in his life, and just to put into perspective, like now we glue kids to iPads, at 3 years old, and it's just fucked up, man.
We don't realize we're actually dulling their senses. We don't realize it.
Exactly.
It's not entertainment. It's a form of entertainment, but it's a degraded form as it compared to, we think that that's more advanced than those kids playing with the bottle cap in the jungle. But I'm questioning that and being like, I don't know, because those kids know how to be happy. Those kids know how to survive. Let's be real. Most of our kids don't know how to survive. You put them in the jungle for a day. Most of them can't take a few mosquito bites, right? There's a bug, I'm like, are we really that advanced, or are we weak?
Yeah, and something you see, like something I noticed with like some of the hardest men and like happiest men that I've listened to or know personally is that like they come across like a lot of people take them the wrong way. Like, he never smiles, or, he's not joking around all the time. And it's like, I think some of the happiest people are very stoic,
Yeah. Well, because there's a difference between like that happy, I think, that it's like, I'm happy, I'm having a good laugh, and I'm fulfilled.
Exactly.
I'm fulfilled, so I don't need to put on a show. So if in any way, shape, or form, type of thing,
Exactly. And when you're doing hard things, you develop that character as well. And that's the only way to do it is by you know, doing hard things. And yeah, you know,
It's true. It's the only way to do it. There's no getting around it.
and you know, again, like I meet so many people who like, you know, again, like I find a big part of our culture this day is like people are just always making jokes and laughing, and nobody like can have these kind of conversations and talk about serious things because they're like, you know, that's boring, or you know.
That's true. I can see that. You start to bring up philosophy with people, and you could start to see a large amount of them start to check out. Unless, you know, unless there's something funny image or something
Because
like
it's not like it's not stimulating, you know, like
that's
it's
right.
yeah. So
Yeah, you have to think, which means there's internal work.
mm-hmm.
And it's the thing that we're letting computers do all of our work. You know, everybody wants the just Google it rather than figuring things out and realizing one of the beauties of life is actually figuring things out for yourself, is
Mm-hmm.
taking things on and having an internal experience, because that's all anybody's ever really doing. So anyways, brother, I know me and you, we could chat all day long. This has been awesome. I'm sure I'm gonna have a bunch, gonna have you back a bunch because there's many different things we could talk about. If somebody wants to reach out, get in touch with you, they want to like, you know, follow your career, what you're doing, what you're up to, what's the best way to follow you and connect with you?
Yeah, they can just follow me on IG, man. It's just Christien Savoie. Yeah, they
I'll
can
leave
do
that in
that.
the link below.
And you know, social media is something I'm starting to get away from more and more for a lot of the reasons
Yeah.
that we spoke of. But yeah, you guys can give me a follow on there.
Yeah, man. I encourage you guys, like for me with social media, it's a double-edged sword like everything else. I use it to build my business. I use it to
Mhm.
connect with guys. I use it to get these type of shows and stuff out there. And I think that if you use social media wisely, you follow positive people and stuff. My feeds are pretty positive, good,
Mhm.
you know, all that type of stuff. I do have a feed because you know I'm involved with politics, and it's a completely different feed. And with that, I like limit so much time on it because that stuff can just suck you in and you're feeling all negative. So yeah, I
Exactly.
think it's a double. Yeah.
Just to correct myself, I didn't mean to like take a shot at anybody who's on
Oh
social.
no, yeah, no. It's
Yeah,
no. The
I,
reality is yeah. I think what you're saying is proper. Like
yeah. It's
we
like you
should
said,
be
and it's
distancing ourselves from it.
using it strategically. You know.
Yeah. No. I think, like I said, yeah, for me, it's about using it strategically. It's a tool like any other tool in the world. And I think it's got some positives, but largely it's being used negatively. And I think that one of the most detrimental parts of social media is people. And I found myself getting sucked up into this rabbit hole. And that's why I'm like, I got to put some regulations around this, because I started seeing how my value was suddenly being sucked up into it, you know, whether I get so many subscribers or so many, and I'm like, I'm not going to fall down that trap, you know. And so I think we have to be very conscious and very careful with social media, because it's just like a drug, like any other drug. If it's not used properly, it can suck you down a big rabbit hole. So listen, guys, thanks everybody for tuning in to the Powerhouse Man Show. You know, I got great guests lined up for you in conversations to help you as a man become a powerhouse both in and outside the bedroom. If you're interested in semen retention and want to try some of the practices of sexual alchemy, go take the free ejaculation control guide in the description. Also, you can just go to my website, book a time to connect with me, send me a message if you got questions. You can check out what I'm up to, and there's all kinds of good resources for you to check into. So again, you could become a powerhouse man. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Christian, appreciate your time, brother.
Much love, brother. Cheers, guys.